Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. Ms. Gump, thank you for being here. As you know, I'm Mr. Leonard, the principal here in Davis Middle School. We want to thank you for coming and let you know that we're here today to discuss the eligibility for Forrest, your son, and what we're going to do for him, what we can offer him. So hopefully by the end of this meeting, we will either found out that Forrest is eligible or ineligible for services in the future. So before we get started with all that, I'd like to go around the room and to introduce each person that's here. So again, I'm the principal, and then here is...
My name is Melissa Babb. I'm the special ed teacher.
Dara Sherman, I'm Forrest general ed teacher.
And I'm Alexis Glenn. I'm the school psychologist.
Nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you.
So, we're going to get started with the meeting, and first off, we're going to hear from the general ed teacher, Ms. Sherman, and hear what she has to say about what she's been seeing in the classroom.
Your son is a very healthy, well-liked young man. He wants to participate in all of our activities. He's eager to learn, and his peers have welcomed him. I've expressed a concern that usually when we elaborate on our lessons, look for evidence that Forrest has absorbed information. I've expressed a concern that maybe he might be struggling with short-term memory. And most of all, he seems to be having difficulty with our reading lessons, or lessons that include reading.
As the special ed teacher, I've had very little time to observe him since it's towards the beginning of the year. But when I go in, I agree with her that he's having some problems in reading. He's also having problems in math. We just want to find a solution to see what he'll be eligible for, if we can provide any accommodations for him. And then we also need to address the fact that he was receiving prior accommodations in his prior school. And if I remember correctly, there was
It was flood.
and so all of the records were lost. So we had done prior testing, and our school psychologist will share those results with you so we can sort of narrow down what we can offer him.
Okay, Ms. Gump. The first test that I administered to Forrest was Bachelor's Intelligence Scale test. It's an IQ test. And Forrest's IQ was found to be at 70. There's a range that we look at, and 70 to 79 is considered borderline below average. Forrest took 4 tests. There was a verbal comprehension, a perceptual reasoning, working memory, and processing speed. On those tests, we actually found that on the verbal comprehension, he was around the 32nd percentile. The 32nd percentile means that he qualified as low end of average. In the perceptual reasoning test, he got a 14%. He scored in the 14th percentile, which means below average, close to average. And the working memory he scored in the 5th percentile, which is borderline below average. And the processing speed test that he was administered, he scored in the 2nd percentile, which also means borderline below average. The verbal comprehension subtest that he took, he was given some words to read aloud, and I found that he was very good at that, and this actually deemed him as his strength. So he did do well in the verbal comprehension. He was able to tell me things, talk back to me with elaboration. And the perceptual reasoning test, sorry about that, that was a visual test, and he had to actually look at things and either put them in order or point to different things. Forrest did very well on that. That was also a strength of his. His working memory was a weakness. He didn't have a lot of short-term memory there, so when I would ask him something that happened at the beginning of a story, Forrest wouldn't be able to recall that, but he could recall something that happened close to the end. I had to do a lot of prompting there with him. And the next test that we did was his phonological awareness test. So this one was actually seeing how well he was able to identify different sounds and letters, the sound and letter combinations, things like that. So I would say, Forrest, can you identify this letter? And he would point and say that's A, and then I would ask him what sound does that carry. And then I would ask him, if I put this this letter A in front of a T, can you tell me what word that makes? So Forrest did struggle there. And his phonological memory, like reciting, if I told him A, B, C, D, E, and I asked him what is the fourth letter in the alphabet, Forrest would have to say the alphabet over in order to recall it. He wouldn't be able to tell me what letter is the fourth letter. And then rapid naming was a list of different words that he had to call out. Forrest did okay on that. When it got to the numbers and the letters, I would give him a sequence of 1, 2, 8, 5, 6, 7, D4. I'd have to ask Forrest to call that out to me in that order. He could do that, but when he had to sequence the numbers and then the letters, he could not do that. And then the last test that I gave Forrest was the Woodcock-Johnson. And he had a broad reading ability, which was very iffy. He was in the 9th percentile, so he's low in reading. But when he did broad mathematics, which is some different equations, things like that, Forrest was found to be very strong in that. And then his writing was also low. He was in the 8th percentile.
Mrs. Gump, do you recall what accommodations were made for Forrest in his previous school?
I know that he had to have a lot of read aloud stuff to him.
Okay. Did he ever have shortened lessons that you were aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Right, because the next step for all of us would be to get together with our IEP team and discuss the test results and discuss accommodations that we feel would need to be made in order to give Forrest the least restrictive environment. We feel just by what we're looking at that he would most likely, after our discussion, we'll reiterate this with each other, that he would be able to be in a regular general ed classroom, which he's already in with the general ed teacher as we speak, so he wouldn't have to change teachers. But we'll discuss that and then we'll get back with you on our findings.
So today, based on what we've heard, and with your permission, we would like to find Forrest eligible for services. Right?
Yes.
Alexis?
Yes.
So, we would like to find him eligible for services, and Ms. Babb wants to maybe meet with you one day soon, so that you can maybe find out more about what's going on, since all those files got ruined in the flood down in Alabama, so that we can make sure that he's properly receiving all the services he needs, comparable to what he's had in the past.
Right, I'll get with you at a later time, and then we'll also meet with the IEP team, and then we'll set up another meeting for our actual IEP meeting, and that's when we would get together and discuss what accommodations we feel we would need to make for Forrest. Do you have any questions?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate you coming in, and we're so glad to have Forrest here at the school, and we look forward to seeing all the great things he can do. So thank you for coming in, and we'll be in touch to set up the IEP meeting to review what services he'll be ready for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
Thank you.
You too.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us again, Ms. Gump, for the IEP section of Forrest's meeting, where we're going to be talking today about the services that Forrest is now eligible for, that we're going to be able to offer him here at Davis Middle School. So before we get started, we're just going to go around and introduce again. I know it hasn't been that long since you've met with us, but again, I'm Mr. Lecletter, the principal here at Davis, and right here is
Melissa Babb, special ed teacher.
Sarah Sherman, general ed teacher.
Alexis Glenn, school psychologist.
okay. And so now that we know everyone again, we're going to hand it over to the school psychologist, just going to briefly kind of talk about how we found that Forrest eligible.
Okay, so Forrest is a 14-year-old 8th grade student who recently moved from Greenville, Alabama to Hampton, Virginia. According to Ms. Gump, GCPS identified him as a student with a specific learning disability who needed special education and related services. Because of his scoliosis, previously worn leg braces, and stuttering, he also receives occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech-language services in Greenville. All of his education took place in a resource classroom with a special ed teacher, except his lunch, and special classes. Hampton, Virginia Public Schools has not received records from Forrest's previous school district despite many written and oral requests. Accordingly, I examined Forrest in all areas of suspected disability at the request and the permission by Ms. Gump in the Hampton City School. The results of the administrative evaluation indicated that Forrest is more likely mildly intellectually disabled than learning disabled. His achievement and ability scores hover at the low average to below average range, indicating that his achievement is commensurate with his ability level. He is weak in working memory and processing speed assessment. Forrest requires continued occupational and physical therapy and possibly adaptive physical education to improve the strength of his legs and back. Forrest has a mild speech impediment and is stutter. His reading, math, and writing are on a 2nd to 4th grade level. He does not demonstrate any social, emotional, or behavioral difficulties. The IQ test that Forrest was given, he ranked in the 70th percentile, which is borderline below average. For the verbal comprehension, he ranked in the 87th percentile, which is also his strength, and he was deemed below average. The next test was the perceptual reasoning test, where he scored in the 81st percentile, which is an overall strength. And the working memory, he received a 71. He ranked in the 71st percentile, which is borderline below average, which is a weakness. And the processing speed assessment, where he scored a 60, or the 60th percentile, which is also extremely low, and this is also another area of weakness for Forrest.
Okay, since our eligibility meeting, the IEP team has met and we've come up with an IEP. Did you and Ms. Sherman have a chance to read over that prior to this meeting? Okay, great. Mrs. Sherman, do you have any more concerns that you would like to voice since the eligibility?
His fatigue was note-taking, but I had seen in the IEP that was addressed.
Okay, okay. All right, well, what I'm going to do now is go over the IEP so we can discuss what findings we came up with and what type of modifications we think will work best for Forrest. So if you'll just bear with me. As our school psychologist stated, we have defined him as having an SLD, which is a specific learning disability. So that would be his diagnosis. The results of the initial or most recent evaluation of the student stated that you had mentioned to us that he had received grades ranging from a B- to a D in his classes and received positive IEP progress reports. You also stated that he had taken all of the mandatory Alabama state exams, but he, in fact, performed quite poorly. Official grade reports from Greenbow, Alabama School District are not available at this time. So that's what we did. Okay, we have him set to receive a standard diploma. That is the goal that we're wanting him to reach. And so that will go with the accommodations. The accommodations will hopefully help him reach that goal. Every student in Hampton that's in the special education program, that in fact that has an IEP, takes something called the Transition Planning Inventory. And when he took it, his interest showed that he wants to join the Army once he graduates from high school. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And in addition, the Transition Planning Inventory also stated that Forrest plans to live independently and he would like to obtain a driver's license as well. We have goals that we set for Forrest, and we call them our measurable annual goals. And within the duration of this IEP, we decided Forrest will increase, this is our hope, that he will increase his decoding and reading comprehension of written materials based on a grade equivalent of 2.5 to a 4.1. So that's a significant increase. Using accommodations, Forrest will increase his math competency to a 4th grade level. As far as progress reports go, he will get those at the regular time where when all the other students get them. So progress reports are usually at a 4.5-week mark, and then they receive their report cards at 9 weeks. The accommodations that we came up with will reduce his writing assignments by 25% on a daily basis. And we think that giving him a copy of backup notes will be beneficial to him as well, also on a daily basis. He will be given preferential seating, usually at the front of the class, wherever he's most attentive. And we will simplify and clarify directions. We would like for you, as his parent, to sign the agenda each day, because at the end of each day, they would be copying homework from each class. He would be switching classes, so he would need to copy and then he would need to sign. And then each teacher would also need to sign it to show that they had checked behind him. He would receive extended time on assignments and tests, whatever he would need, use of a calculator, and small group testing. The IEPs, the way that they work is you have 364 days before they expire. So his would expire 1 day prior to the signing of the papers. All right, we do want him on the SOL track. So he would be taking all of the SOLs just like all the other students. He will be taking reading, math, science, history, and also a writing SOL. The student's participation in state and division-wide assessments is part of the SOL track. Let's see, he will be at, he'll be required to take grade level SOLs because he's going to be in the general ed classroom, so he would be taking the same SOLs that they would. Based on the present level of academic achievement and functional performance, it says, is this student being considered for participation in regular SOLs? We said yes. And there's other programs such as VMAS that we feel that he would not be eligible for, that he needs to be on the regular SOL track. More accommodations for assessments. We will be doing read-alouds for him, which means that he would be read the material and then he would be required to take the test that way. So he would get read-alouds for reading, math, science, history, and writing. He would be given read-alouds for the prompts. As far as the writing part, though, he would be required to write that on his own. We do feel as though the least restrictive environment for him would be inclusion in a general ed setting. So he would be mainstreamed in for the day with all of the students, and he would be required to do all the activities and lessons that they do with the modifications that we're providing for him. So all core subjects he would be included. In addition, that he would have lunch, any type of resources, any other types of activities that they do. Okay, due to Force's need for simplified directions, extra time and read-alouds, as I mentioned before, would be given for all testing situations. He would be given as much time as he needs to complete his assignments. He needs services offered by the inclusion setting to be academically successful, and we feel as though these accommodations will help him to be successful in the classroom. This is a notice for prior, it's for prior notice. Do you have any questions first of all?
Not so far as that stuff, but at the beginning you were talking about how we might be providing services for his legs, but I think he's pretty good on that. I don't think he needs any.
So no occupational therapy session. Well, she does have, our occupational therapist does have really good strategies to help strengthen. I know Forrest plans to do running, so she could give him some, pre-assessments to work out the ankles and, make sure the joints and everything, he can, to use them to their ability. Some little things, maybe what flexibility, if it's a matter of just bending the foot back and forth. She's really good with that stuff. But if you don't want it, we don't have to give it to him. But it would help in the long run.
Well, sure. And I forgot to mention that since he's inclusion in a general ed classroom, I will be coming in the classroom as a special ed teacher. He will not be pulled out. So I will come in and provide services for him, make sure that all the accommodations are being met.
Okay.
And you'll be with them for each subject?
Yes, I'll be with him for all core subjects.
Among other students?
Among other students. It's my job to help all the students within the classroom, and I'll have other inclusion students in there as well. So do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay, this form is a prior notice form, just to ensure that you did in fact receive the IEP prior to this meeting. And so we'll kind of transfer it over to the principal.
Yes.
And when he finishes, I will give you your rights and responsibilities, and you can take a look at that and see if you have any questions.
So, with this IEP in place, we're gonna go ahead and sign off on this sheet. You can sign right next to where the parent guardian is.
Go ahead and let
And,
you know.
yeah, we're gonna put this
There you
into place, there you go. And if at any point during the year you feel something needs to be adjusted, just let either myself or Ms. Babb know, we can certainly go through and meet again, and we can reevaluate the IEP at that time.
And here's your copy of the rights and responsibilities. It tells you anything that you need to know, and of course, please feel free to call, ask any other questions that you may have. And here's the prior. I'll get you to sign the prior.
Thank you for that.
We're still sign that.
Yes. Okay. And with that, we thank you for coming in, and we hope to have a successful year with Forrest, and if you have anything else, just let us know. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.